I'm going to say.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Other
Okay.
room?
Yes.
Welcome, people. We see that you're joining. So nice to have you. Unfortunately, we can't see you. You can see us, and we can't hear you. So we'll tell you how to deal with that in a minute. But welcome, welcome. Here we go. There we go. So we have 9 people joining us so far. We're happy to have you. Thank you for joining. We're just going to hang around, let you get settled, and start in a little bit, just a little bit. It's a process. Cheerio.
Cheerio. Get your glasses of water so you're well hydrated during the.
Exactly.
You can tell I'm a nurse.
Yes.
Hydration, hydration.
That's great.
Oh, Lynn, I just noticed that my LWV is backwards.
Only to you. We can see it forwards.
It's forward.
Yeah, it's
Is
forward.
that right?
Yeah, you have a mirroring.
Interesting.
There's a mirror option that you can check that will make it so you can see it the right way, but don't worry about it.
Later.
Yeah. Exactly. We're up to 13 attendees, so we've got a little time. Oh, someone has their hand raised. Colleen. Hi, Colleen.
Hi, I couldn't tell if I was on with you guys or not. So,
You are right there. And
okay, I will mute myself. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, Colleen.
Hello there.
Thank you. All right. Somebody, I love the hand raising option. It's just, this is such a unique way to work in the world.
Ooh, I guess I need to click on a couple other things here. There we go.
It looks good. It's just making me hungry, Sean. The lemons there.
I know lemons, oranges, jalapenos,
Huh?
limes.
Oh, Pam has her hands raised now. I'm going to let Pam talk. Hi, Pam.
I just wanted to say hello to all of you and to say hello to Carol Joy.
Oh,
It's
this is-
Pamela
Oh,
Dawn and Tim.
I
is here.
recognize that voice. Hi, Pam.
Hi, Tim is here with me. We just wanted to say hi.
Oh,
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you, Lynn.
Hi, Pam and Tim.
pleasure. Thanks for saying hi. We are going to ask you to mute now if you don't mind.
Oh, of course not. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. And now Patricia has her hand raised. Hi, Patricia.
Unmute, Patricia.
There you go.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right, I will mute myself.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, and I
This
see
is
Madeline.
this is a weird format that lets people hear us, but we can't normally hear you. Everyone's muted, and there is a Q&A box at the bottom that has, and some people have already found it. Look at that. They're just saying hi, Sean from Daria, and hi.
Oh, Daria.
Says, hi, Colleen.
Hello, Daria. Glad to have you join us.
Great. So it's so nice to have everybody here. We are getting up to 22, so we're going to wait just a little bit longer. We had 40 people register, so we're about halfway there. So we are thrilled to be here, and we're just going to hang out for just a little bit longer. I know it's just 12:30 now, so people will be joining. So I have another hand raised. Colleen's. Colleen, you can unmute yourself if you want to talk again. Nope, I guess she doesn't. But she is muted now. All right, I have to remember.
Okay, I see Carol Bennett is asking a question.
Okay.
She doesn't see her usual audio mute button, and she can't see anyone else either. So, and
That's
she's
right.
used
So
to using Zoom, so maybe you could address that.
yes, absolutely. So this is a different format than you're used to. This is called a webinar as opposed to a meeting. A webinar has the people who are watching not on the screen, because we're going to be showing you videos, and that gives, if you are on the screen, then it makes it, everybody's over everything else. So for this presentation, we do it so that you can see the people who are presenting and the videos that are being presented, but you are behind the scenes, if you will. We have an option to talk to us with a Q&A box. You can also raise your hand now, but after the meeting starts, we encourage you to use the Q&A box to talk to us. So people are doing that already, which is great. Just saying hello. Yeah, so that is why you won't see your audio mute, because you are officially muted throughout this presentation. And some people, if you want to talk now, I can open that up for you to be able to talk, but during the meeting, we're going to ask you to be muted the whole time.
It might be nice if they could talk a little.
Well, I can't let everybody talk, only one,
Oh, no.
one at a
No,
time.
no.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, this is a different format, and we've tried to figure out a balance to make it work, but when you put 50 people on a screen, it just is very confusing trying to present. And this is a lot of very detailed information, so we want you to be able to.
I need a pen.
Yeah, grab your, if you have gotten your sample ballot, this is a good time to keep it in front of you.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. I say, Sylvia says, totally fine. The club is adaptable. I love that.
We certainly are, as everyone has had to become in these last few months.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And Nancy, hi Nancy, nice to have you. And yes, if the chat is only for the panelists, which is why we're asking people to use the Q&A box. Or at least most of the time it's only for the panelists. Okay, so now let's see, we're up to 30 attendees. And so that might be a good time to actually get started.
Okay.
So Sean, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. And I'd like to welcome everyone to Soroptimist International of Novato's monthly program meeting. And we are very fortunate this month in having the League of Women Voters give us a presentation, which they've worked very hard at making, on the pros and cons of our ballot measures for this election day coming right up on November 3rd. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about Soroptimist. And Soroptimist is a global volunteer organization that provides women and girls with the access to the education and training they need to achieve economic empowerment. That's basically our mission. That's what we work so hard at trying to provide funding for our local women, and also contribute to many international projects that help women get ahead. And
That's
thus,
awesome.
So I'd like to just welcome everyone to this meeting today, and we are very happy to have you. Thank you, Lynn and Carol Joy, for helping us with this.
Well, thank you, Sean. Such a nice introduction. We so appreciate it. Welcome to the pros and cons presentation from the League of Women Voters. My name is Lynn Dooley, and this is my co-host, Carol Joy, who Sean kindly introduced us already. Behind the scenes, someone you won't see is Dee Butori, who is our tech genius. She is helping us with our presentation today. So as we mentioned, we're with the Marin League of Women Voters. And this year, the League of Women Voters is celebrating our 100th anniversary. We were founded 100 years ago in support of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote, finally. We are so thrilled. Yay, exactly. So in keeping with the theme of the League of Women Voters, we are a political, nonpartisan organization. So today our goal is to present a clear and unbiased overview of the 12 California state ballot propositions. Since all our presentations are virtual this year, we are all still figuring out this weird format. And as you found, this is a new format for Zoom called the webinar. And so please bear with us. We are hoping that it's all going to go smoothly, but sometimes things happen. And so we want to just ask you to bear with us. You'll see today recorded messages for each of the 12 state ballot propositions. We recorded them in a format to give it a little more pizzazz, so they have a little, they're a little more entertaining and a little less dull. So hopefully they will inform you, but also keep your attention, which is our goal. We do stop after every presentation, every proposition, to give you the current, any supporters or opponents who have joined since we made the videos, and any current campaign financing information. The campaign financing comes from a website called ballotpedia.org, which is an incredible resource, and it updates financing pretty much every 2 weeks. These numbers came from September 19th. We're going to be able to, at that time, after each proposition, take a couple of questions. Obviously, time will permit how many we get to, but if you have a question, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and if you can put your questions in there rather than the chat, we'll be monitoring that as we go along to make sure that we answer whatever questions we can. If we don't know the answer, we'll say that and we'll get back to Sean with the answers. We'll look them up and we'll find out for you. And after the meeting, if you want, we can hang around and answer any questions we didn't get to. So Carol Joy is going to give you more about questions, but we're going to turn it over to her and then we're going to get going.
Okay, thanks. So there are a couple of items to note. On your ballot this year, there are 12 propositions, and they are number 14 to 25. Now, propositions 14 through 24 are initiatives. So for an initiative, a yes vote means that you support the way the proposition would change things. Proposition 25 is a referendum. And that means it's asking voters to decide on a law that was already passed. So for a referendum, a yes vote means that you support the law and want it to go into effect. We use the California Legislative Analyst's Office to provide the fiscal impact of each proposition. The Legislative Analyst Office is a nonpartisan government agency that has provided fiscal and policy advice to the California legislature since 1941. As you watch, if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A box. And the icon for that should be at the bottom of your screen. It says Q&A. So we'll do our best to answer your questions as time allows. So now let's get started with Proposition 14.
Hi, I'm Elaine Biagini, and this is Pat Brecker.
We're going to talk to you about Proposition 14. You'll see it on your ballot as authorizes bonds continuing stem cell research. It's an initiative statute, and it's also a bond measure.
This is a general obligation bond, which means it is paid for by the state general fund and requires voter approval. What is the question behind Prop 14?
The question is, should California issue $5.5 billion in general obligation bonds to continue funding grants for research and development of stem cell treatments?
Can you give us a little more background? What current issues does this address?
Well, in 2004, voters approved Proposition 71, which added a provision to the California Constitution allowing stem cell research. The measure created the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine, also known as CIRM, and allowed the state to issue $3 billion in general obligation bonds to finance its work. Prop 71 funded projects that include stem cell research to develop potential treatments for many diseases, including Alzheimer's, stroke, diabetes, and cancer. It also granted funds to support the construction of new research facilities and research internships. Without additional funding, CIRM will be forced to shut down.
So what does Proposition 14 propose?
Prop 14 would allow California to issue $5.5 billion in general obligation bonds to continue funding CIRM.
How will those funds be spent?
Well, the bond funds would be spent on grants to entities that conduct research, clinical trials, and funding for creating medical research facilities, as well as student training programs.
Got it. And Prop 14 stipulates that no more than 7.5% of the bond funds are spent on operational costs, right?
Right.
Can you give us more specifics about the purposes?
Sure. It will support continued research on therapies and treatments for chronic diseases and injuries, including brain and nervous system diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and dementia. There will be continued support for the Community Care Centers of Excellence, which are sites that conduct human clinical trials and provide treatments and cures. It will continue training programs for undergraduate students and fellowships for graduate students. It will also ensure that trials and treatments will provide equal opportunity for all Californians. And finally, it will increase the members on the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee.
What is the expected fiscal impact?
Well, the Legislative Analyst's Office estimate the total cost to pay off these bonds would be $7.8 billion, $5.5 billion for the principal and $2.3 billion for the interest. State costs would average about $260 million per year for about 30 years, with payments starting in 5 years. Now, this amount is less than 1% of the state's current general fund budget.
Supporters say, Robert Klein II says, this medical revolution holds the promise of restoring health and quality of life for many of Californians, individuals, and families suffering from chronic disease and injury. And more funding is needed to complete research for human trials on promising treatments.
In opposition, Marcy Darnofsky, Executive Director of the Center for Genetics and Society, says, it does nothing to address CIRM's built-in conflict of interest or its lack of legislative oversight, despite it being an agency supported wholly by public funds. And it outsources critically important decisions about ethical standards due to an unaccountable national committee.
Yes vote means I support issuing $5.5 billion in general obligation bonds for the state's Stem Cell Research Institute and making changes to the Institute's governance, structure, and programs.
A no vote means I oppose issuing this $5.5 billion in general obligation bonds.
Now, since that video was made, the California Democratic Party has endorsed Prop 14, and the San Francisco Chronicle has opposed it. And here is Prop 14's campaign financing. In support, $2.4 million in cash and $6.7 million of in-kind contributions. The top 3 donors are Robert Klein, contributing $125,000 in cash and $3.5 million in kind. Dagmar Dolby for $2.1 million and the Juvenile Diabetes Research Fund for $1.75 million. In opposition, no funds have been contributed in opposition to date.
And now would be the time that we would answer questions, if there are any. There aren't any in the Q&A box at the moment, so I just wanted to remind you to throw something in there. If you have a question, we'll be happy to try and answer it. If not, we're on to,
Hi, I'm Linda, and this is my partner, Ann. This is Prop 15. You'll see this on your ballot as increases funding for public schools, community colleges, and local government services by changing tax assessment of commercial and industrial property. It's an initiative constitutional amendment. So, Ann, will you please tell us Prop 15's question?
Sure, Linda. Prop 15 asks, should large commercial and industrial properties, except those used for agriculture, be periodically reassessed and taxed based on market value, with the additional tax revenue going to local schools and communities?
Thanks, Ann. And what is the current situation?
Well, currently, commercial and industrial property taxes are a major source of funding for counties, cities, schools, and special districts. But today, a significant number of large commercial and industrial properties in California are assessed far below market value. Over time, this underassessment has meant less revenue to fund schools and critical services.
And how did that come to be?
Well, 40 years ago, voters passed Proposition 13, which froze property values at 1976 levels, allowing for reassessment only when property is sold. Residential property is sold on average every 10 years, while commercial and industrial properties sell much less frequently.
What does Prop 15 propose?
Prop 15 will require commercial and industrial properties valued at more than $3 million to be reassessed at least every 3 years and taxed based on current market value. It eliminates personal property tax on equipment, computers, and fixtures for small businesses and provides a $500,000 per year exemption for all other businesses.
How about residential property and farms?
Prop 15 will not impact residential properties. This includes houses, apartments, mobile home parks, anything residential, whether owned or rented. Property used for agriculture is also exempt. Residential and agricultural properties will not be reassessed until sold. They will continue to be taxed based on purchase price.
How will the additional revenue be distributed?
40% of the additional revenue will go to K-12 schools and community colleges, and 60% to city and county governments and special districts. The money for schools will be held in a special fund and must add to, not replace, current school funding. The money for schools will be distributed according to the standard local control funding formula with the added guarantee that all schools must receive a share. Money for local governments will be distributed to cities, counties, and special districts in the usual way.
What about accountability?
Prop 15 requires all recipients to publicly disclose the amount of money they receive each year and how this money is spent.
What is the fiscal effect of Prop 15?
According to the Legislative Analyst's Office, increased property taxes on commercial and industrial properties worth more than $3 million will provide approximately $6.5 to $11.5 billion yearly in new funding to local governments and schools. Property taxes on business equipment probably would be several $100 million lower per year.
What do supporters say?
Well, supporters say that this measure ends the unfair property tax system that allows a fraction of commercial and industrial property owners to avoid paying their fair share of taxes. They also say that Prop 15 guarantees that every school district, charter school, and community college district will receive additional funding. And this measure helps small businesses by eliminating the current business personal property tax.
What do opponents say?
Opponents say that the measure will raise taxes on business property, which will ultimately be passed on to consumers in the form of increased costs on just about everything people buy and use. If businesses lose their Prop 13 protections, homeowners will be next. This initiative is the first step in a plan to end Prop 13 protections for all California homeowners. They also say that Prop 15 would accelerate business flight out of California.
A yes vote on Prop 15 means commercial and industrial property worth more than $3 million, except those used for agriculture, will be taxed based on current market value. The increased revenue will provide new funding for public schools and local governments. A no vote means commercial and industrial properties will continue to be taxed based on purchase price. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Linda.
So since this video was made, the San Francisco Chronicle, the LA Times, and the Sierra Club have all endorsed Prop 15. The San Jose Mercury News, the East Bay Times, and the Republican Party have all opposed it. The campaign financing, as of now, is $42 million in support. The top 3 donors are $7 million from the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation, $7 million from SEIU, California State Council, and the California Teachers Association has given $1.5 million, all in support. Opposition, $29.7 million has been contributed. The top 3 donors are the California Business Roundtable Issues PAC with $13.2 million, $839,000 from the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, and $801,000 from the Business Properties Association PAC. So no questions in chat, or I'm sorry, in Q&A. So on to 16.
Hi, I'm Carol Joy, and this is my co-host, Katie. And this is Proposition 16. You'll see that on your ballot as allows diversity as a factor in public employment, education, and contracting decisions. So Katie, what is the question that is raised by Proposition 16?
Well, Prop 16 asks, should California and local government entities reinstate affirmative action programs and be allowed to consider diversity as a factor in public employment, education, and contracting decisions?
So what is the current situation? How does this stand today?
In 1996, California passed Proposition 209, which bans affirmative action.
And what is affirmative action? And what is Proposition 209?
Affirmative action is race-based and sex-based preference. Proposition 209 bans state and local governments from discriminating against or granting preferential treatment to individuals or groups on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in operation of public employment, education, or contracting.
Well, are there other discrimination laws in effect now?
Yes. The U.S. Constitution, as well as other state and federal laws, prohibit discrimination. Proposition 209 added the prohibition on preferential treatment.
So what does Prop 16 propose then?
So if approved, Prop 16 would repeal the section of the California Constitution introduced by Prop 209, thus eliminating the ban on the consideration of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in public education, public employment, or public contracting. In other words, Prop 16 would reinstate affirmative action. Proposition 16 does not alter other state and federal laws guaranteeing equal protection and prohibiting unlawful discrimination. It also does not create quotas or caps.
And what would the fiscal impact be of Prop 16?
Well, there is no direct fiscal effect on state and local entities because the Prop 16 does not require any change to current policies or programs. However, possible future fiscal effects would depend on choices by state and local entities to implement policies or programs that consider race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in public education, public employment, and public contracting.
And what do the supporters of Prop 16 say?
Well, supporters say that all Californians deserve equal opportunities to thrive with fair wages, good jobs, and quality schools. And despite living in the most diverse state in the nation, women and people of color currently are still discriminated against.
And then what do the opponents say?
Opponents say approval of Prop 16 would be a step backward, introducing a new form of discrimination to favor politicians' favorites. They also say, let's not perpetuate the stereotype that minorities and women can't make it unless they get special preference.
So, in summary, a yes vote on Prop 16 supports repealing the section of the California Constitution that was introduced by Proposition 209 and would reinstate affirmative action programs. A yes vote would allow public colleges, universities, and agencies to include race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin as part of their decision-making.
And a no vote maintains the current constitutional law that bans affirmative action. Thanks so much, Carol Joy.
Okay, thank you, Katie. And recently added supporters of Proposition 16 are the Sierra Club and the California Democratic Party. Recently added opponents are the California Republican Party and the California Libertarian Party. As for campaign financing on 16, in support, there has been $12.3 million. The top three donors are M. Quinn Delaney for $5.5 million, the Kaiser Foundation for $1.5 million, and Patty Quillen for $1 million. In opposition, $961,000. The top three are Students for Fair Admissions, $50,000, Gail Harriet for $30,000, and Frank Shu for $10,000. And are there questions?
No questions.
Okay, then here is Proposition 17.
Hi, I'm Katie, and this is my co-host, Carol Joy.
And we're going to talk to you about Proposition 17. You'll see that on your ballot as restores right to vote after completion of prison term. This is a legislative constitutional amendment.
So, Carol Joy, what is the question behind Prop 17?
Prop 17 asks the question, should people on parole in California be allowed to register to vote and to vote in elections?
What are parolees' voting rights now?
Well, currently, the California Constitution prohibits people in state or federal prison or on parole from voting until their parole is completed. People who are in county jail or supervised by county probation are currently able to vote.
So how does parole work?
Well, state parole generally supervises for a certain period of time those who serve a state prison term for serious or violent crimes.
And what is the current population of parolees in the state of California?
Well, as of right now, there are about 50,000 people on state parole.
What changes would Proposition 17 make?
Prop 17 would amend the state constitution to restore people on state or federal parole the right to vote as soon as they complete their prison term. Prop 17 would still prohibit people who are in prison from voting, but would allow those people on parole to vote.
Anything else?
Yes. Those eligible to register to vote may also run for elective office if they're qualified. So if passed, those on parole would be able to register to vote, to vote and to participate in elections themselves.
And what is the estimated fiscal impact?
If Prop 17 is approved, it would likely result in increased annual county and statewide costs in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Those funds would pay for voter registration and ballot materials. It would also result in one-time state costs, also likely in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, to update voter registration cards and systems.
So what do supporters say about Prop 17?
The supporters say this, that parole is not punishment, but is to help to reintegrate people into the mainstream. Many parolees are working, paying taxes, raising families, and doing right. They cannot now vote on policies that affect their lives. The supporters also say the removal of the right to vote is rooted in a punitive justice belief system that attempts to rob marginalized people of their political power. It is not based on an interest in public safety.
And how about opponents? What do they say about Proposition 17?
Well, the opponents say that individuals on parole have not completed making full restitution for their crimes. Their liberties, such as movement and ownership of certain items, are heavily restricted and monitored. Any misstep results in re-incarceration. Opponents also say parole is to prove rehabilitation before full liberty, including voting rights, is restored.
So in summary, a yes vote on Proposition 17 supports this constitutional amendment to allow people on parole the right to vote. A no vote leaves the current constitutional amendment in effect, thereby continuing to prohibit people who are on parole for felony convictions from voting. Thank you so much, Carol Joy.
Okay, and thank you, Katie.
So, excuse me, Proposition 17's campaign funding in support, Susan Pritzker, who owns a philanthropic organization, has donated $200,000. Oh, the total is $571,000. So Susan Pritzker's philanthropic organization has donated $200,000. The ACLU of Northern California has donated $100,000, and the California Nurses Association has donated $30,000. In opposition, no funds have been submitted at this point. But there are a couple of questions in the Q&A box. Yes, we can certainly send the list, and we can also tell you where you can find the full list of donors. So the question is, can we send the list of the top 3 donors to the organization? And yes, we can do that, and we'll be happy to do that after. We can also tell you where to go to find out the full list of donors. And what are the basic differences between the crimes for those in state and federal prisons and county prisons? You know, that's a good question, and I don't know for sure. My gut tells me that it depends on where you commit it, but I will find that out and I will let you know. I don't know that for sure. And is there an average length of parole? And the average length of parole is 3 years. That's about the average length of parole. We also did find out during our former events that we've been presenting this, that most everyone wants to know if the fines that a parolee has, a prisoner has accumulated need to be paid before they can accept this right to vote. And as you know, that's been in the news in Florida, and that is not the case in California. You do not have to have their balances be eliminated in order for them to have the benefit of this if this passes. So I will find out about that other one, and let's go on to 18.
Hi, I'm Katie, and this is my co-host, Carol Joy. We're going to talk to you about Proposition 18. You'll see it on your ballot as amends California Constitution to permit 17-year-olds to vote in primary and special elections if they will turn 18 by the next general election. So Carol Joy, what is the question behind Proposition 18?
Well, Prop 18 raises this question. should 17-year-olds who will be 18 at the time of the next general election be allowed to vote in primary and special elections?
What's the current law regarding 17-year-olds voting?
Under the California Constitution currently, an individual has to be at least 18 years old on the date of an election to vote in that election.
How would Prop 18 change existing law?
Prop 18 would amend the California Constitution to allow 17-year-olds to vote in any primary and special elections if they will turn 18 by the next general election.
Anything else?
Yes, any registered voter may run for elective office. So that means 17-year-olds who are now eligible to vote under this amendment will also be eligible to run for elective office if they meet all the other existing eligibility requirements.
And what is the expected fiscal effect?
Well, Katie, we could expect to see costs go up for counties ranging from several hundreds of thousands of dollars to $1 million every 2 years. And that's to send and process voting materials to eligible registered 17-year-olds. Also, there would probably be an increased one-time cost to the state in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to update the existing voter registration system.
So what do Prop 18 supporters have to say?
The supporters say Prop 18 would allow 17 to 18-year-olds to participate in the full election cycle, and that it would boost the number of youths who actually vote. They say when 17-year-olds can't vote in the primary, it discourages them from voting in the general election when they are 18 because they didn't pick the candidates that are on the ballot.
And what about the opponents? What do they say?
The opponents say 17-year-olds are too young to vote. They need more life experience before they are ready. They say that 17-year-old brains are not fully developed in the logic and reasoning portion, so they would just be making bad decisions. They also say that schools would persuade 17-year-olds to vote on one side or the other by putting up posters or by having teachers advocate for certain policies.
Okay, so when you vote on Prop 18, remember, a yes vote supports this constitutional amendment to allow 17-year-olds who will be 18 at the time of the next general election to vote in primary elections and special elections. A no vote opposes it. Thank you so much, Carol Joy.
Okay, and thank you, Katie. And the new supporters for Proposition 18, since we made the video, are the San Francisco Chronicle and the California Democratic Party. New opponents are the San Jose Mercury News, the East Bay Times, the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, and the California Republican Party. For the campaign financing in support, there has been $334,000, and that comes from the Committee to, must be the Committee for Innovation for California's Future for $100,000, Kevin Mullen for Assembly 2020, $50,000, and the California Nurses Association for $30,000. And no funds have been contributed in opposition to date. Questions?
No questions. So on to 19.
I'm Kevin, and this is my co-host, Regina, and this is Proposition 19. You'll see it on your ballot as property tax transfers, exemptions, and revenue for wildfire agencies and counties amendment. This measure requires a majority vote to pass. So, Regina, what is the question behind Proposition 19?
Prop 19 poses the question, should the California Constitution be changed to modify the rules for transferring property tax assessed values and use any resulting new tax revenues for fire suppression efforts, schools, and local governments?
Okay, so can you give me a little background? What is the current situation?
In 1978, Prop 13 capped property taxes to 1% of value based on purchase price, and each year thereafter to increase by 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower. Property gets reassessed whenever property is sold. These property taxes generate nearly $60 billion annually. Currently, homeowners over age 55 can transfer the taxable value of their present home to a replacement home of equal or lesser value and is located within 10 participating counties, one time only.
And what about inherited property?
In 1986, voters excluded parent-to-child inherited property from reassessment, and a decade later, another vote extended this exclusion to any transfer between grandparents and grandchildren if the grandchildren's parents are deceased.
What does Proposition 19 propose?
Prop 19 would impact taxable property in two ways. First, eligible homeowners over 55 years old or with severe disabilities and wildfire disaster victims would be allowed to transfer their tax assessments anywhere within the state and allow their current property tax to be transferred to a more expensive home with an upward adjustment. Homeowners 55 or older would be allowed to use this transfer 3 times in their life compared to 1 under current law.
And what about inherited property?
Yes, that's the second way Prop 19 would impact taxable property. Children or grandchildren who inherit property and do not use it as a principal residence would not be able to use the parent's low property tax value. The property would be reassessed to market value.
What is the fiscal effect if Proposition 19 passes?
The expectation is a net increase in property tax collected. The increase would mostly allocated to funding wildfire agencies with a small amount retained by the state.
Funding wildfire agencies, how would that work?
Right, 2 wildfire agencies would be created and allocated 85% of the net tax increase. The other 15% would be allocated to local governments and schools. The net tax increase is expected to be tens of millions of dollars per year. These gains could grow over time to a few hundred million per year.
What do supporters say?
Supporters say that the current property tax rules disincentivize longtime homeowners from moving, trapping empty nesters in houses that are too big for them and locking out new families. They also say that it closes tax loopholes on inherited properties not used as primary residences, directing increased tax revenue to fire protection, schools, and local governments.
And what about the opponents? What do they say?
Opponents say that this removes existing protections that allows parents and grandparents to transfer their properties to children or grandchildren. And opponents also say this plugs one hole in the state's property tax laws while creating another.
In summary, what does a yes vote mean?
Right, a yes vote means it amends the California Constitution to allow eligible homeowners over 55, disabled, or wildfire disaster victims to transfer their tax assessments anywhere within the state and allow tax assessments to be transferred to a more expensive home with an upward adjustment. Eligible homeowners 55 or older will be allowed to increase the number of times that they can transfer their tax assessments from 1 to 3, requires inherited homes that are not used as principal residences to be reassessed at market value when transferred, and allocates these additional revenues or net tax savings resulting from the ballot measure to wildfire agencies and counties.
And what does a no vote mean?
Eligible homeowners would continue to be allowed to transfer their tax assessments within 10 counties to homes of equal or lesser market value one time. And it retains the existing rules on tax assessments on inherited properties.
Thank you, Regina.
Thank you, Kevin.
So Prop 19 is very confusing, as we have just seen. One of the things we wanted to clarify that the current situation allows an eligible homeowner to move within the same county and keep the same property tax as long as their new home is not more expensive than their old home. There are also certain counties, there are 10 counties that allow these rules to apply when an eligible homeowner moves into their counties. So you can do it within your own county right now. That does not change. You can do that one time. That does not change. If you move to this new proposition, it goes to 3 times, and you can do it within the whole state of California. I'm sorry if that's been confusing. Since our videos, we've added supporters, or Prop 19 has added supporters Gavin Newsom and the California Democratic Party. And in opposition, the Los Angeles Times, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the California Republican Party have been added. There is $36 million that's been contributed in support to date, $30.7 million from the California Association of Realtors, $4.8 million from the National Association of Realtors, and $100,000 from the California Professional Firefighters. In opposition, $45,000 has been contributed by the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. And we do have a question, what does upward adjustment mean? Doesn't sound like that wording is needed. I thought we could carry the current property tax even if one buys a more expensive home. Okay, 2 good questions. The first question is an upward adjustment. So the current law is that you can buy a house of equal or lesser value. In the new law, if it passes, you can buy a house of equal or greater value. But your property tax credit only applies to the value of your current home. So if you buy a home, if your current home is worth $1 million and you buy a new home that's $2 million, you would carry the original property tax on that first million, whether it was $300,000, $3,000 when you bought it. But the new additional money, you'd be paying the current rate. So that would be at 1% as, or 1% as the Prop 13 has indicated in the past. Does that make sense? You bought a house for $300,000, you're paying $3,000 in property tax. That house is now assessed at $1 million. When you buy a new house for $2 million, you carry that first $300,000 value for that first million, and then the second million would be at 1%, so that would be $3,000 plus an additional $10,000 for that second 1 million. Very confusing, but that's, I hope I made that clear. Okay, current property tax, even if one buys a more expensive home. No, currently the value of your home, if you transfer it, must be equal or lesser value. The new proposition would be equal or greater value. And there is a lot more information about this at ballotpedia.org. I'll put that in the notes so that you can see that. And let's go on to 20.
Hi, I'm Carol Joy, and this is my co-host, Katie. And this is Proposition 20. You'll see this one on your ballot as restricts parole for nonviolent offenders. Authorizes felony sentences for certain offenses currently treated only as misdemeanors. This is an initiative statute. So, Katie, what is the question behind Proposition 20?
Hi, Carol Joy. Proposition 20 poses the question, should California law be amended to make changes to the process by which people are charged with certain crimes and granted parole? And should the state require DNA collection for certain misdemeanors?
So what is the current situation? I mean, how does the law stand today?
In 2011, the US Supreme Court ruled that overcrowding in California's prisons resulted in cruel and unusual punishment, a violation of the 8th Amendment. And California was ordered to reduce the state's prison population. Various laws enacted from 2011 to 2016 were intended to reduce the state's prison inmate population and informed current law.
So what are the results then of these laws that you're talking about?
Well, today, non-serious offenders are imprisoned in local jails with county supervision as opposed to state prisons with state supervision. Also, several non-serious, non-violent crimes are labeled as misdemeanors, as opposed to felonies or wobblers, which are chargeable as misdemeanors or felonies. And felons have increased chances for parole for non-violent crimes and are given opportunities to earn sentence-reducing credits for good behavior.
And have these changes resulted in reducing prison population?
Well, these measures have brought the overall state prison population below 137.5% of capacity as ordered by the US Supreme Court. However, many individual prisons are still operating above that percentage.
And then what does Prop 20 propose?
Proposition 20 would amend elements of current law. The debate regarding this proposition is whether new reforms are needed to address the unintended consequences of prior reforms to increase public safety, or whether the measure is undoing prior criminal justice reforms.
Well, are there specific changes in Prop 20?
Yes, Prop 20 would specifically change state law to increase criminal penalties for some theft-related crimes. It would also allow certain misdemeanors to be charged as either misdemeanors or felonies. Also, it would change how people released from state prison are supervised in the community and request parole or probation be revoked if someone violates the post-release supervision terms for a third time. And it would change various parts of the process for considering the release of inmates from prison, upgrading some nonviolent crimes as violent. Finally, Prop 20 would require state and local law enforcement to collect DNA from adults convicted of certain crimes, including some crimes that are currently charged as misdemeanors.
And then what would the fiscal effect be of Prop 20?
According to the Legislative Analyst's Office, the fiscal effect would be increased state and local correctional costs, likely in the tens of millions of dollars annually, primarily related to increases in county jail populations and levels of community supervision. Also, increased state and local court-related costs that could be more than several $1 million annually. Finally, there may be increased state and local law enforcement costs, not likely to be more than a few $1 million annually, related to collecting and processing DNA samples.
So what do the supporters say about Prop 20?
Well, supporters say Prop 20 closes a loophole in the law that allows convicted child molesters, sexual predators, and others convicted of violent crimes to be released from prison early. They also say Prop 20 expands DNA collection to help solve rapes, murders, and other serious crimes, and strengthens against habitual thieves who steal repeatedly.
And then what do the opponents say?
Opponents say Prop 20 is a prison spending scam. California already has severe and lengthy sentences. They also say prison special interest groups want you to spend tens of millions of dollars on prisons, which would force cuts to rehabilitation, school, mental health, and homelessness.
So in summary, a yes vote on Proposition 20 supports this initiative to add crimes to the list of violent felonies for which early parole is restricted, to recategorize certain types of theft and fraud crimes as wobblers, and to require DNA collection for certain misdemeanors. A no vote on Prop 20 opposes this initiative to change the current law. And that's it. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Carol Joy.
And the new supporters of Prop 20 are Devin Nunez, the San Diego Union Tribune, and the California Republican Party. New opponents are the California Teachers Association, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the California Democratic Party. For campaign financing, in support, there is $3.9 million. In support, $2 million from the California Correctional Peace Officers Association, $1.4 million from the San Francisco Foundation, and $200,000 from the Los Angeles deputy sheriffs. In opposition, we have $5.6 million, $2 million from Patty Quillen, $1.25 million from the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation, and $500,000 from Stacy Schusterman. And are there questions?
Yep, so there is a question from Laurel. Crimes such as rape with the current laws are considered nonviolent when you read the fine print. Will this consider a reassessment of the level of nonviolent crimes? So Prop 20 will reevaluate a long, long list of nonviolent crimes and recategorize them as violent. And I'm not off the top of my head familiar with whether rape is one of them. I think it is, but I can't state that for sure. But again, Ballotpedia lists all of those, long, long, long list. Also, the Secretary of State website would have that list as well. A comment from Daria. Remember, strangulation, although it is now a felony under California law, given the absent or delayed visible injuries, it is often not charged correctly. I do not want stranglers released under those circumstances when strangulation is charged as a misdemeanor. So this law moves laws from misdemeanor, it upgrades the level of intensity for laws. So it goes from nonviolent to violent, misdemeanors to felonies. So that's again something to read about, but there aren't any laws that I've seen in this bill that go backwards. They don't change a felony into a misdemeanor. A danger assessment will be considered in your example. Oh, a danger assessment would be considered in your example, Laurel. So that is something that would work also. So I think that answers your questions, but if I'm not clear and I haven't been able to help you, then please put it in the Q&A and I'll try it for it next time. And let's move on to 21.
Hi, I'm Regina, and this is my partner, Greg, and this is Proposition 21. You'll see it on your ballot as expands local government's authority to enact rent control on residential property. It is an initiative statute. Greg, can you tell us what question Prop 21 poses to voters, please?
Sure. Prop 21 asks, should local governments be allowed to enact rent control on more types of housing than are allowed under current law?
And what is the current situation in California?
During the late 1970s and 1980s, when rental housing costs were increasing, 13 California cities adopted rent control ordinances. The specific content of the ordinance varied from city to city. In 1995, the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act, Costa-Hawkins, became law. The law prohibited rent control of single-family homes, and it exempted housing constructed after February 1995 from rent control, and allowed cities to keep their own rent control ordinances they had previously approved. It allowed landlords to raise rent to the current market value for a vacated unit. In 2019, just last year, a new 10-year law was passed and signed by the governor that caps the rent increase upon new tenancy to 5% plus inflation or 10%, whichever is lower, and applies to all rental housing in California except a single property like a house or condo and housing built in the last 15 years.
So besides the new 2019 law, how many other cities or local governments have rent control in California?
Currently, there are 15 local governments in California with their own rent control ordinance, but none in Marin, except in some mobile home communities.
What does Proposition 21 propose?
Prop 21 would allow local governments to establish rent control on certain residential properties over 15 years old, and it would allow rent increases in rent-controlled properties of up to 15% over 3 years at the start of a new tenancy. In addition, Prop 21 would allow local governments to adopt rent control on housing units except housing that was first occupied within the last 15 years and units owned by persons, not corporations, who own no more than 2 housing units.
So Prop 21 would cap the new rent at the start of a new tenancy to a 15% increase over 3 years?
That's exactly right.
What would the fiscal effect of Proposition 21 be?
Overall, a potential reduction in state and local revenues in the high tens of millions of dollars per year over time. Depending on actions by local communities, revenue losses could be more or less. Property taxes collected could be impacted negatively if the value of rental housing declines.
What do supporters say?
They say first that even small increases in rent forces more families into homelessness, a burden on the entire community. Supporters also say that many seniors and veterans presently are left with too few resources for food, medical care, and other needs. And finally, they say that Prop 21 guarantees landlords a reasonable profit.
What do opponents say?
Opponents say that more than 60% of Californians rejected this type of scheme in 2018. And they say that rent control results in less available and less affordable housing. And finally, they say that Prop 21 will stop new housing from being built, cost jobs, and hurt the economic recovery.
So in summary, what does a yes vote mean?
Prop 21 would allow local governments to enact rent control on housing that was first occupied over 15 years ago, with an exception for landlords who own no more than 2 homes with some restrictions. Rents charged following a vacancy would be capped to no more than a 15% increase over 3 years.
And a no vote means?
A no vote means that local governments would not be able to increase the rental stock covered by rent control because Costa-Hawkins would still be in effect.
Thank you.
So for 20, recent supporters are the LA Times, the California Federation of Teachers, and the California Democratic Party. Recent opponents are Gavin Newsom, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the California Republican Party. Prop 21's campaign financing is $20.7 million in support. Donated $20.6 million from Renters and Homeowners United, sponsored by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. The gentleman who owns the AIDS Healthcare Foundation is very engaged in rental situations, rental concerns. $25,000 from the California Nurses Association. In opposition, $41.5 million has been contributed. The top 3 donors are $6.6 million from Essex Property Trust, $5.6 million from the California Business Roundtable PAC, and $5.5 million from Equity Residential. So the Q&A box is empty at the moment, and on we go to 22.
Hi, I'm Katie, and this is my partner, Linda, and this is Proposition 22. You'll see it on the ballot as exempts app-based transportation and delivery companies from providing employee benefits to certain drivers. So Linda, can you tell us the question posed by Prop 22?
Sure. Prop 22's question to voters is, does current law apply to app-based ride-sharing delivery companies? And should these companies classify drivers as employees rather than independent contractors?
And what's the current situation for app-based drivers?
California requires employers to comply with a set of labor laws enacted to benefit employees, including minimum wage, overtime, workers' compensation, and unemployment insurance. These laws do not apply to workers classified as independent contractors. In September 2019, California enacted Assembly Bill 5, which limits the type of work independent contractors may be hired to perform. The new law adopts the ABC test.
So what is the ABC test?
The ABC test requires an employer to show that its contractors, A, work independently, B, perform work outside the hiring company's core business, and C, are customarily engaged in an independently established trade, occupation, or business of the same nature.
And this is the current law?
Yes, the California Attorney General has stated that current law applies to app-based rideshare and delivery companies, and therefore, these companies must hire drivers as employees. However, these companies continue to hire drivers as independent contractors. The Attorney General, along with attorneys from major California cities, is suing to force these companies to comply with the law.
So what does Proposition 22 propose?
Prop 22 would allow app-based rideshare and delivery companies to classify drivers as independent contractors under the law, thereby overriding Assembly Bill 5.
And what does that mean for the companies and the employees?
Drivers would not receive employee benefits and protections. Instead, the proposition would require app-based rideshare and delivery companies to offer a new set of benefits for drivers, including minimum compensation levels, healthcare subsidies, auto and injury insurance, and so on. This measure also would prevent local jurisdictions from enacting their own rules for rideshare and delivery companies, such as the establishment of a higher minimum wage.
And what fiscal effect would Prop 22 have?
According to the Legislative Analyst's Office, the measure would yield a minor increase in state income taxes paid by rideshare and delivery service company drivers and investors.
So what do supporters of Prop 22 say?
Prop 22 protects the ability of app-based drivers to choose to work as independent contractors with control over where, when, how long, and for whom they work. Proponents also say that Prop 22 saves hundreds of thousands of jobs at a time when millions are struggling to pay their bills.
And what about opponents?
Opponents say Prop 22 would absolve these companies of the responsibility to contribute to Social Security, Medicare, unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, and other social safety net programs, shifting the burden to the taxpayers instead. They also say Prop 22 would create an unfair advantage for companies that don't follow labor laws, threatening public and private sector union jobs and stripping away control on workers' rights.
So Linda, in summary, what does a yes vote for Prop 22 mean?
A yes vote supports changing labor laws to define app-based rideshare and delivery drivers as independent contractors and adopting policies specific to these workers.
And what does a no vote mean?
A no vote opposes this measure, meaning that AB 5 would be used to classify app-based drivers as either independent contractors or employees.
Thank you, Linda.
My pleasure, Katie.
And for Proposition 22, there are new supporters, which are the San Francisco Chronicle, the California Chamber of Commerce, and the California Republican Party. In opposition, the opponents have been joined by the LA Times, the Sierra Club, and the California Democratic Party. For campaign financing, in support, there has been $180 million, the top three donors being Lyft for $47.5 million, Uber for $47.5 million, and DoorDash for $47.5 million. In opposition, $10.3 million, the top three donors being $1.5 million from the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, $1 million from SEIU UHW West, and $900,000 from the Service Employees International Union. And are there questions?
No questions on 22 so far, although maybe there is one in there. Okay, let's see. One open question. What do the drivers think are the majority in favor or against? Well, that's a good question because the drivers that are featured in the ads, the $180 million that's being spent by the driving and delivery companies, they feature quite a few drivers in those ads, and they're saying they would like to be independent contractors. So there's really no way to know what the actual feelings of the drivers are. There's a lot of information that's being put out there that the number of jobs would be eliminated if this were to pass, or if this were to fail, because it's failing, that would make them employees, not independent contractors. So it's hard to know. It's just, I think there's a lot of personal opinion that comes in here, and we are in the unbiased lane, so we could certainly talk about it off camera or off after the meeting, but there's really no way to know exactly what the employees are thinking, the drivers are thinking. I did want to go back to Prop 20 for a second, because I found that there's some information that would address the question about rape, and it says that the ballot initiative would define 51 crimes and sentence enhancements as violent in order to exclude them from Proposition 57's nonviolent offender parole program. So the chart that includes these 51 crimes has a number of references to rape in a number of different ways. Rape is included as such, but there is qualifications for rape that are also included. So I can direct you to this website if you're interested in following up on that. Okay, so we're on to 23. There's only 25, so we're doing great.
Hi, I'm Joan, and this is Larry. We're going to talk to you about Proposition 23. You'll see it on your ballot as establishes state requirements for kidney dialysis clinics, requires on-site medical professional. This is an initiative statute. So what is the question behind Prop 23?
Should outpatient dialysis clinics be required to have a physician on site when patients are being treated, offer the same level of care to all patients, regardless of insurance, and report infection-related information?
Okay, so for those of you who don't have intimate knowledge of dialysis clinics, how do they currently operate?
Dialysis clinics have a specialty registered nurse, sometimes a nurse practitioner or physician's assistant in the clinic on the site. Each clinic employs a physician medical director responsible for meeting existing state and federal requirements. Each patient has a personal nephrologist who is responsible for treatment orders and must be available for emergencies. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services requires all clinics to track quality indicators through the National Health Safety Network.
So then what would Proposition 23 change?
Proposition 23 would require clinics to have at least one licensed physician on site during treatment. It prohibits discrimination against patients based on their insurance status and requires clinics to report data on dialysis-related infections to the California Health Department.
Okay, Larry, is there anything else?
Yes, the process for closing clinics would change. There is currently no law that prevents a non-viable clinic from closing its doors. Under this proposal, clinics must obtain consent from the state health department to close a clinic.
And what is the fiscal effect of Proposition 23?
The Legislative Analyst's Office reports that Prop 23 would result in increased state and local government costs in the low tens of millions of dollars annually.
So what do the supporters say?
Well, the supporters say that the presence of a physician on site will improve patient care. They say that this proposition would improve communication and oversight between private dialysis clinics and the California State Department of Health.
And what did the opponents say?
The opponents say that Proposition 23 would make our physician shortage even worse and lead to more overcrowding in emergency rooms. They also say that the current system adequately handles the problems that occurs.
So in summary, Larry, what does a yes vote mean?
A yes vote means that at least one physician must be on site during treatment at all times, except if there is a shortage of qualified licensed physicians and the clinic has at least one nurse practitioner or physician assistant on site. It also means that the consent to close the clinic would require state approval and that the source of payment could not be justified as a reason to deny treatment.
So what does a no vote mean?
Dialysis clinics would continue under the present system and regulations.
Thank you very much, Larry.
And thank you, Joan.
I just love our members doing these videos. Just so sweet. Okay, so campaign financing. Oh, joining the supporters is the California Democratic Party. Joining the opponents is the Republican Party in California, both of those. The campaign financing in support, $6.2 million from the Service Employees International Union, United Healthcare Workers West, and that donation has been in the total of $5.6 million. The remaining funds for support are little bits and pieces here and there. In opposition, $93 million has been contributed, $59.8 million from the dialysis clinic owners DaVita, and $26 million from the dialysis clinic owners Forensis, and then $6.9 million from U.S. Renal Care. There is a question: who is required to be on premise now? A nurse practitioner. Who administers the treatments now? So currently, either a nurse practitioner with specialty in dialysis or a physician's assistant with a specialty in dialysis is on site to organize and administer the treatment. There is a medical director who is in charge of the clinic, not necessarily there all the time, but that is who is on site now. How many people are currently being denied treatment based on ability to pay? So this is a good question. The Medicare and Medicaid has a agreement with the dialysis labs that they will not, no one will be rejected treatment based on their ability to pay currently. They do not pay. They have a negotiated rate that they pay for every patient that they sponsor, Medicare and Medicaid. There's an independent organization that's not the California Health Department that oversees that. But currently, Medicare and Medicaid are adamant that they are not changing the, people are still not denied care based on their coverage. Ugh, it would be nice if I could actually talk. So insurance companies pay more for treatment. Medicare and Medicaid have a negotiated lesser rate, but no one is turned away based on payment at this point, according to our research. And did the Democrats oppose 23, which means a no vote? Democrats are supporting 23. So that is the yes vote. The yes vote means that the yes vote is the medical doctor needs to be on site. A no vote means that the medical doctor does not need to be on site. And I think that's because the clinics are on the no side because they were the ones that would be paying for the doctor to be on site.
Also, the rules about closing a clinic, because now a clinic can be closed if it is just financially not good for the companies. So there's that part of it too. So all the changes that were listed in there.
Hopefully that answers your questions. Okay, we're on to 24.
I'm Lauren.
And this is Katie.
We're going to talk to you about Proposition 24.
You'll see it on your ballot as amends consumer privacy laws. It's an initiative statute.
What's the question behind Proposition 24?
Should the California Consumer Privacy Act of 2018 be amended to expand consumer privacy protections and create a new enforcement arm?
How does the Consumer Privacy Act currently work?
Current law gives consumers a heads up regarding data that is being collected on them. Certain businesses must notify consumers that they are collecting data.
What businesses are we talking about, Katie?
Businesses are qualified by their annual revenue and whether they buy, sell, or share data. Affected companies must comply with personal data privacy rights and not treat customers differently for declining to have their data sold. Fines are associated for each violation of all of these requirements.
What does Prop 24 propose?
Prop 24 would provide consumers even more visibility and control over attempts to collect data on them. Under the new provisions, consumers would be able to request that businesses not share consumer personal info and opt out of the collection of sensitive personal info used or disclosed for advertising or marketing. Businesses would be required to correct consumers' personal info upon request.
Does Prop 24 address minors?
Yes, businesses would also have to get permission to collect information from consumers under 16 years of age and from parent or guardians if the consumer is under 13 years of age.
Is there anything else, Katie?
Yes, Prop 24 would create a new state agency to enforce and implement consumer privacy laws and impose administrative fines.
Well, what's the fiscal effect?
According to the Legislative Analyst's Office, the fiscal effect of Prop 24 would increase annual state costs by at least $10 million, but enforcement is unlikely to exceed the low tens of millions of dollars. Plus, some costs would be offset by penalties for violating these laws.
What do supporters say?
Well, supporters say Prop 24 would prevent businesses from using or sharing sensitive data about your health, finances, race, ethnicity, and precise location. Also, Alistair McTaggart, a San Francisco-based real estate developer who filed this ballot initiative, says current laws are a great baseline, but I think there are additional rights that Californians deserve.
How about the opponents? What do they say?
They say Prop 24 puts the burden on consumers to opt out of countless intrusive data collection practices, one by one, that companies are currently barred from by default. They also say hidden economic discrimination persists. People without money to spend cannot pay for loyalty programs and can expect worse connections, slower downloads, and more pop-up ads.
In summary, then, a yes vote means you support this ballot initiative to expand the state's consumer data privacy laws and create a new privacy protection agency to enforce those laws. A no vote means you want to uphold the current state's data privacy laws. Thank you, Katie.
My pleasure, Lauren.
And newly supporting Proposition 24 is the LA Times, and newly opposing it is the California Republican Party. The California Democratic Party has no position on this one. For campaign financing, in support, $811,000 in cash and $4.6 million in in-kind contributions. The support from Alistair McTaggart is $800,000 in cash and $4.6 million in in-kind contributions. In opposition, there is $45,000, $25,000 of that from
Californians for Real Privacy, and 20,000 from the California Consumer and Privacy Advocates. And are there questions, Lynn?
No, no questions at the moment.
Okay.
And you are in the final pass.
The home stretch.
Yeah, final stretch. There you go.
Hi, I'm Doug Cooper, and my partner is Laura Merlo, and we're going to discuss Proposition 25. You'll see this on your ballot as referendum on law that replaced money bail with a system based on public safety and flight risk. So Laura, what is Prop 25's question?
Should the state of California affirm Senate Bill 10, bail reform, which eliminates money bail?
This is, can you explain how bail works?
Sure. Bail is a tool for ensuring that a criminal defendant who is allowed to leave jail prior to trial will return to court to face trial. In California, it is a superior court judge hearing a case who makes the decision whether a criminal defendant may be released from jail while awaiting trial, and who sets the amount of bail, consulting a bail schedule with suggested amounts.
And then how is bail posted?
The accused may post bail using his or her own money, or they may contract with a commercial bail bond agent who obtains bail funds from an insurer. The bail bondsman pays the bail in exchange for a non-refundable premium, usually about 10% of the amount of bail.
So what's the situation as it stands today?
In 2018, Governor Jerry Brown signed Senate Bill 10, which was designed as a bail reform measure that would eliminate money bail. Under SB 10, judges would base pretrial detention decisions on a defendant's flight risk, their likelihood of failing to show up for trial, and their danger to public safety. SB 10 also would release most people accused of misdemeanor offenses from pretrial detention on their own recognizance. But SB 10 did not go into effect because the bail industry hired signature gatherers who obtained enough signatures to place a referendum on the ballot for public vote. And Proposition 25 is the referendum for SB 10.
So then what does Prop 25 propose?
Under Prop 25, the processes for getting released from jail before trial would be based on a system of risk assessments.
And what are risk assessments? How would this actually work?
Suspects would be categorized as low risk, medium risk, or high risk. Suspects deemed to be a low risk to public safety or failure to appear in court would be released from jail until their trial. Suspects deemed high risk would remain in jail with a chance to argue for their release before a judge. Medium risk suspects could be released or kept in jail, up to the judge.
Okay, so Prop 25 allows SB 10 to now actually take effect. Is that right?
Exactly. It would eliminate money bail and create a new process for release before and at arraignment.
So then what's the fiscal impact expected for Prop 25?
Prop 25 would impact state and local costs, but how much is uncertain. It would depend on how the law is interpreted and implemented in each county. The new release process would increase the workload for state trial courts, district attorneys, and public defenders. These costs could be in the mid hundreds of millions of dollars annually. On the other hand, there could be reduced jail costs if fewer people are jailed before trial or jailed for less time.
To summarize, supporters say the current system favors rich defendants who can easily make bail and keeps poor defendants, especially defendants of color, in jail, while people who are eventually found not guilty or not even charged may be stuck with large debts to pay off the bail and associated fees.
Yes, and the opponents say, while the intentions of SB 10 may be good, its provisions may effectively result in more people being jailed than under the current system. And they say that Prop 25 will cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars a year, overburdening courts and creating a new bureaucracy.
To be clear, a yes vote is one to uphold the contested legislation SB 10, which would replace cash bail with risk assessments for detained suspects awaiting trial.
And a no vote is to repeal the contested legislation, Senate Bill 10, thus keeping in place the use of cash bail for detained suspects awaiting trial.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Doug.
So supporters joining the Prop 25 campaign are Gavin Newsom and the San Francisco Chronicle. Opponents are the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association as well as the Republican Party. The supporting finances, $8.3 million has been contributed in support. Connie Balmer, a local philanthropist, has donated $2.5 million. Her husband, Stephen, who was the 30th employee at Microsoft, has also donated $2.5 million. And John Arnold, also a philanthropist, has donated $1.5 million. In opposition, Triton Management, which owns Aladdin Bail Bonds, has donated $2.8 million. The total is $9 million. I should have said that first. Triton Management, $2.8 million. Bankers Insurance, $1.1 million. And A1A Holdings has donated $1 million. So with no questions, that concludes our presentation. It's really been a pleasure to be with you today. We want to thank the Soroptimist International of Novato for hosting us. And I want to thank Carol Joy for co-hosting as well as being the star of so many of our videos. Didi Butori, who is our tech genius behind the scenes. We call her the queen of tech, and she has done a fabulous job with our videos. We thank you very much. You can learn more about these propositions by visiting our website, marinlwv.org. And the other thing you can learn more about is the League of Women Voters. So Carol Joy has some election info, and then we'll be closing up. Thank you.
So to end this, remember, Election Day is November 3rd, and that every active registered voter in California will automatically be sent, if they have not already been sent, a vote by mail ballot beginning October 5th. If you recently moved, you will need to re-register. The deadline for online registration is October 19. Voters are encouraged to vote by mail. You can return your ballot in any of three ways. By mail, you are encouraged to mail your ballot at least 7 days prior to Election Day. The election department ballot drop boxes, that's separate from US mail, those are located throughout Marin until 8 p.m. on November 3rd. And the polling places in Marin will be open October 31st, November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. But the most important thing is be sure to vote. And thank you.
Thank you. So Sean, are you still there? You want to come back and say hello?
Sure, I'd love to come back.
Here we go. Great.
I think you have to enable my video.
Oh, I do.
You do.
Sorry about that.
That's fine. I'm so appreciative of this program. You know, the
start.
You think that we're off. There I am. I want to thank you so much, everyone at the LWV, for providing us really needed information. I find that with all of the different challenges we have in the past few months, I have not been able to pay as much attention to a lot of these issues as I wish I could. And plus, I just hear a lot of non-biased information that I'm very appreciative of. So thank you so much for adding this to our group.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank everybody who came and enjoyed and learned.
Thank you.
Wow. Soroptimist International, would also love you sometimes to go to our own website and learn more about us. We are always happy to have new members.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay.
Thank
That
you.
would be our pleasure. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And we're going to say goodbye. Oh, Sylvia Berry raised her hand. Sylvia, you want to talk? Hold one moment, please. Let me find you. Where did you go? There. I don't know. Oh, where did you go? Sorry, Sylvia. I'm having trouble. Oh, there you are. Allowed to talk. There you go. Hi, Sylvia. You can talk.
Oh, actually, no, I just hit, I was going to say thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, we're welcome. Thank you. All right, everybody. We're going to end the session, but thank you very much.
Okay, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Sean. Bye-bye.